Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome back. This evening, I have a request. I know you enjoy listening to these audios, and I love making them for you. It makes me happy. However, finding content isn't always the easiest thing to do. So if you have any stories you'd like me to feature, please post them down in the comments below so that I can continue making videos that you enjoy and that I enjoy. Anyways, enough of that. Let's get into it. Tonight, I have a selection of stories from Reddit. They could be true, maybe not. You'll never know. So for your listening pleasure, I bring to you Morbid Whispers, House of Dreams. 4-person roadblock by OkayButLikeWhatIf. Back when I was 16 years old, because of my living situation, at least twice a month I'd have to make a 2-hour drive from a city area to my parents' house in a rural area. I'd say about an hour and a half of that drive was just country road with nothing but valley, corn, or some other crop on either side, with the occasional farmhouse, or something that you think people might go in and out of willingly along the way. Because of how used to this drive I'd already been beforehand, I didn't think much of driving that long stretch of no cell service, no phone booth area. Nothing had happened yet, so surely nothing would happen ever, right? In the middle of one of those drives back, while the night was slowly taking over, as I was driving, I saw a flash of light. Huh? That was weird. Maybe just a momentary anemic moment. Another flash. Well, maybe someone's coming this way. Has their high beams wonky or something? Another flash. Alright, something's wrong. I slowed down a bit so as not to get blinded periodically and swerve off the road and try to figure out what was ahead. Further in the distance, I think I see a person. Actually, multiple. My eyesight's well and good at this time in my life, so I was putting 2 and 2 together, getting close enough to realize there were 4 people on this shitty country road, lined up across it as if to make a roadblock to prevent any cars from passing through. Another note to this is that I don't see any car around them that they could have come in. Don't remember any farmhouses or sheds nearby either. The rest of this encounter felt like it took place in the span of an hour because of my anxiety, but it was likely no more than 5 minutes in hindsight. I'm driving maybe 10 miles an hour now, and I'm getting closer and realizing that I'm definitely, without a doubt, approaching a line of 4 grown-ass people with huge, bright white masks on, staring in my direction. 2 of them definitely have bats or some other distinctly long, blunt objects, and one person is holding something that the flashes are coming from. I've seen enough horror movies and heard enough stories about crimes on roads like this that I thought I was somehow impervious to think in that moment I only have 2 options: slow down and hope they eventually part way around my car, running the risk that they could very well get the jump on me and my dinky car, or pick up the pace and disregard whether or not they'll have the chance to move out of the way when I potentially accelerate through them. I decide the latter. I had no means to protect myself with other than a bat in the trunk of my own car at the time. I was a young teen who passed as a girl who could easily get knocked down with a solid slap because of my build, and my car was shit enough to where if I stopped I wouldn't doubt someone could break in with easy force. Now, hearing gravel and dirt kick up from under my tires, I was more freaked out at the potential that I could drive myself off the road along with taking out some strangers, who I am now dead certain are carrying bats as I accelerated towards them. I'm proper freaking out, but I've accepted that this was the decision I made from the adrenaline of fear of any situation. I accelerated more, and thankfully the two that were directly in my way lunged out of the way just in time to not get hit. I stopped accelerating to catch my breath, as if I needed to, and see them in my rearview mirror. The other two, for some reason, trying to haul ass towards my car as if they could catch up, and it became so real in that moment that there were people who were intentionally trying to get the jump on me in the middle of fucking nowhere. Probably not just shit kids trying to get kicks and giggles out of freaking someone out, but real adults trying to harm someone that came that way. I just focused on driving out of there as fast as I could. I focused on going forward, didn't turn the radio back on to distract me. I felt shook by the experience in general. The most fucked up part, honestly, was getting home and realizing that part of what I was driving on wasn't gravel. It was nails that were now embedded into my tires. Praise whatever god may be out there. Or more likely, my own saved up money. For me, somehow having those sturdy ass tires. Didn't tell my parents the full story about what happened, and they just assumed I was being reckless and someone was playing a prank with just scattering some nails about randomly on the road. I told the story to some of my friends, and they told me I probably wasn't in any serious situation and they were just trying to get a scare out of me. Especially since being in a car was a pretty big advantage in the situation, which I can't deny. Still creeped the absolute hell out of me, and I remember it every single time I drive down a road that looks any type of similar. This is something that I add on to the end of the story after having told it to friends beforehand, but this happened before. Otherwise, I would have definitely felt more comfortable saying it wasn't creepy and just annoying/bothersome. I still wonder where they came from, since I very clearly remember there not being a car anywhere close by nor any buildings around, but I guess I could have been wrong. Made a note of it every time I drove it in the daylight. I know this was mostly in a car because of the proximity and near intimate relation between my car and an external human's body. It definitely felt like a personal creepy encounter, and I'll stand by that much at least. Also, given the potential of direct one-on-one human interaction, should I have slowed down enough? Had to tell this one to someone other than my friends, since they've mostly heard the story and I only just had a nightmare about it again a day ago. And I still don't know if I'm overreacting about the situation. All I know for sure is that those were definitely people, and I definitely was afraid. A harmless drunk? Or something worse? By The Middle 214. So this just happened last night. My fiance and I live off a big street that has a pizza place maybe 8 blocks away. So we'll often walk up and get food there. Usually no issues or anything. It's a decent area. But that said, there has been an uptick in crime lately. Some man was randomly murdered and another house was broken into within the last week or so, for instance. So we walk there normally. It's about 11 p.m. and everything's fine. We were on the way back, passing an apartment complex, when I noticed my fiancé start to get really on edge. Looking over toward the complex, there was a small parking lot in front with windows for some of the apartments on the ground floor. As we continued to walk, he got more on edge. At this point, I hadn't noticed anything yet. I have bad vision and tinnitus, but I knew something was definitely off, of course, because of how he was acting. So we completely passed the complex and crossed an intersection when I see a man close behind us, probably no more than 15 to 20 feet. I immediately get a very bad feeling. This guy has the worst intentions. Different than the anxiety I was already feeling due to knowing something was off. I can't know if I'm right, but I don't often get this feeling, even in uncomfortable situations like such. We sped up, take our phones out. Fiance has his ready to record while I had mine ready to dial the police. But after following us for about a block like that, the man turned a corner and went what looked like into a parking lot of a bank. We stayed alert the rest of the way home, but he didn't follow. As we walked the rest of the way, my fiance explained what happened to me. When we passed the apartment complex, he noticed the man stumbling a bit and peering into different windows of the apartments. After we had crossed the intersection, the man literally ran to catch up with us and slowed once he reached the 15 or so feet behind us. My fiance thought that he might have been drunk due to the bit of stumbling, but also that he thinks the guy went into the parking lot of the bank to hide in order to jump someone, and that he decided not to with us because it would have been 2 against 1 or because we both had our phones ready. I don't know, but it was definitely scary. Fiance mentioned feeling the same bad vibes that I did as well. What I definitely learned from this situation is that I need to be way more aware of my surroundings. The scarier part is that we considered splitting up, with him walking home first due to an initial issue with the order. I don't want to think about what might have happened if either of us had been alone. What do you guys think? Some drunk behaving poorly, or was this guy up to something? I was violently bullied by a kid in my church, by Ziggs75. When I was a kid, 25 years old now, I had dealt with a boy in my church who bullied me. This all happened somewhere around 13 years ago. I don't know how old he was, but I think the kid was maybe 3 or 4 years older than me. I also can't pin my exact age, nor do I remember when it started occurring. But I was probably roughly 11 to 13 when the worst episodes happened. Maybe some incidents happened when I was as late as 14, but I'm not certain of that. He whipped me with his shirt when we were in the locker rooms during a swimming activity, also punched me in the privates when we were in the church hallways alone, and poked me with a pin inside a classroom. While we were cleaning up a campsite one day, he also pushed me downhill several times, which caused me to run into a few trees. In our church, we were assigned to close the chapel doors during services. I missed the cues once due to me spacing off, and he threatened me if I had made that mistake again. So I quickly learned to shut the doors on time, and he never carried out that threat. I was very submissive to him, and didn't lift a finger to stop the guy or seek help. Another detail I want to discuss is that the bullying incidents were very sporadic. I think he would poke me with a pin one day and then would wait another 5 months to whip me with a shirt during a swimming activity, for example. He was very unpredictable and could be affable to me for months at a time before going after me again. I was always on edge around him and tried to avoid him whenever it was possible. Beyond speaking to me in a generally condescending tone, I also don't recall him saying anything insulting to me. He seemed to be entirely physical and didn't appear to care about tearing me down emotionally or mentally. In other words, he would only hit me in the back and just walk away without saying anything. I think since he never escalated over a consistent period of time was the reason why I was never hospitalized from it. He also attacked some other kids, as I remember some other boy crying in the corner after my bully went after him. I never told anyone about him bullying me until years later. Something that I should also mention, the kid came from a very broken home. His parents were ultra-controlling religious fanatics. to the point that they even banned chocolate for being sinful for some reason. And the family's dysfunctionality was quite legendary among my church. You know the old saying, you don't know what happens behind closed doors? That didn't apply to them whatsoever. If anything, their closed doors were pretty much public exhibits. The children were very openly rebellious. The kid himself once illegally crossed the Canadian border despite the adults in a church trip and got detained for nearly a day, and often discussed their problems on social media and with pretty much anyone they could talk to. Their antics, like him breaking a church window once, also raised a few eyebrows, so word got around quite fast. My belief is that my bully needed a literal punching bag for his demons, which I suited quite nicely for him. His off-on attacks might have been just the occasions when he wanted stress relief. His dad was also a very abrasive and arrogant dude who literally wiped poison ivy on his face just to prove a point once. Yes, it ended up with him hospitalized. He was very open about his parenting methods and felt no shame in them. As such, my bully ditched his home very quickly. I'm not even certain if he graduated high school and cut off all ties with his family. That is pretty much how his attacks on me stopped. Again, I didn't tell my family about it until around 2 years later. My mom even asked me about why I didn't tell the family in the car once, which I don't think I had to respond to. Don't know why I just let him treat me like that and didn't seek help. If I had to guess, I probably was just a naive child who didn't understand the full gravity of the situation at the time. Perhaps fear also played a part in it as well. The kid was at least twice my size and easily towered over me. It was almost certain that if I tried to fight back, he would have pummeled me, so I likely felt like fighting back would have made things worse. When I was a little older, somewhere in my mid to late teens, I often angst about how he got away with bullying me like that. It left me with no closure whatsoever, and I often turned to edgelord revenge fantasies to compensate. I did meet with him one last time years after he left home. Essentially, his family was moving out of state due to a severe family emergency involving one of his younger sisters, and they had a farewell party at my family's house. He showed up with his friends. Seeing him again caused me a considerable amount of fear and anxiety, and I honestly had dark thoughts about shoving him into the ground. However, I knew better and restrained myself. Our last conversation was just a basic exchange of "Hi, how's it going?" and we left it at that. Haven't heard from him since, and that was over 8 years ago now. Even after all of these years, I still angst about how he got off scotch-free, though I did hear around the grapevine that he lived a very wild and reckless life that caused him a bit of misery down the road. Sorry for the long, rambling post. It's just been on my mind off and on lately, and I just wanted to share my experiences somewhere. I still don't have any closure from it even after all those years, and I don't think I ever will. It's just another part of my life, and I'm going to have to live with it. To the person that broke into my house while I slept. Under the Bridge 00. Hi. Me, my sister, and my mom have been trying to make sense of this for the past couple of hours, and the facts get less comforting the more we compare our experiences of that night. So last Friday night, I, 17 male, was home alone while my family, besides my sister, 21, who was at work, stayed in their cabin a few kilometers away. I'm used to staying home alone, as this exact scenario is very common in the summertime, especially while I'm working and can't travel from the cabin and back. I'm not usually jumpy or afraid while I'm home alone anymore, used to the odd creaks and settling noises of our old house. I was especially comforted by the fact that my sister's dog was also in the house with me that night. The most noises could be attributed to him, and if anything were to happen, he would act as a guard dog of sorts to alert me to anything odd. At the same time, however, he is the type of dog to bark at any noise or person walking past the door or windows, so I'm used to hearing him bark or growl at night. Even so, this past Friday, the sound of his barks at nearly 12 a.m. were disconcerting, to say the least. Despite my comfort with staying home alone, I am still terrified of the premise of a break-in or some other uninvited human interaction at midnight. I let him bark for a few seconds, telling myself that it was just someone walking past our glass door in the adjacent alleyway, and he would quiet down once they passed. Needless to say, that's not what happened. He kept barking and growling for a few moments too long, and I finally got out of bed. I sleep in the basement, and walked upstairs to check it out. As I had suspected, he was standing alert at the glass door. I was comforted for a moment until I walked over, ready to close the curtains and go back to sleep, and saw the door open about 2 or 3 inches. I froze. I had let Bosco, the dog, out earlier that night, but I know I closed the door. I have never left this door open. I am a paranoid person with bad anxiety, especially concerning break-ins and the like, so I would never, home alone, forget to close the door. I am 100% certain. But at the time, I didn't let myself think about these facts or even acknowledge that I could not have left the door open, because I knew it would send me into a spiral, possibly even an anxiety/panic attack if I didn't explain this away. I closed and locked the door, double checking that it was certainly locked. Using the flashlight on my phone, the lights were all off. I looked around the entire second floor of my 3-floor house, including closets and other reasonable hiding spots, just to put my mind at ease, and upon finding nothing, went back downstairs to my room. As I was down there, trying to push away the fear, I could hear Bosco walking around on the floor that doubles as my bedroom's roof. I thought I was overthinking it when it started to sound like human footsteps accompanied by Bosco's footsteps. He walked around for about 10 minutes before I put in my headphones and talked myself down until I could fall asleep. At 2 a.m. that same night, my sister comes home from work. I woke up a few minutes before this to Bosco in the basement, but she never does. There's even a gate to stop him from getting into the basement, whining at my bedroom door. When I got up to let him out, my sister walked in, and we let him out the front door rather than the glass patio door, letting him in the same way. We talked for a while before I went back downstairs, and my sister went to the bathroom. I forgot about the door, busy with work for the next few days, and forgot to mention it to anyone until tonight. My sister and mum were home with me for a movie night while my dad and brothers stay at the cabin. I remembered the door situation when we were picking out horror movies to watch. I was sharing it as a creepy, almost funny story before my sister spoke up, saying that the same night, an hour or so after they got home, the door was open again. The same door was locked from the inside and not opened since earlier that night. My stomach dropped, and I started shaking the second this was revealed. We first started trying to explain it away. Maybe she had let Bosco out and forgot to close it until we both recalled that we used the front door. Then we were trying to justify a reason someone would break in and not steal anything, and proceed to stay for 2 hours before leaving. Ultimately, I realized that I quite possibly locked someone in the house with me, then forced them to hide upstairs while I searched the second level of the house. Then this hypothetical person would be trapped up there, now knowing that this house, that appears empty with the rest of my family gone and all the lights off, was not empty, and there was a dog who would bark if they showed themselves again, alerting me to their presence. Then, when I was in the basement and my sister was in the bathroom, they ran out the glass door, which is timed perfectly to when they found the door open once more, much wider than when I found it, as though they were only in a hurry on the way out. Perhaps they left it open the first time for a quick escape, or to stop the loud sound of it meeting the doorframe. Either way, it ties together too perfectly for me to reasonably brush it off. I know it's unlikely, especially with nothing missing, but in this small town, there have been many reports of break-ins with nothing missing, vandalizing, or just breaking and entering many times. So it's not as unlikely as it may seem to be in a bigger city. I can't make sense of this, and I'm shaken up thinking of the possibility of someone being in my house while I was asleep, alone in the basement. There's a part of me that doesn't believe it, but I can't shake the too many coincidences that all tie together to make this as concerning as it is. I certainly am glad that my searching came up empty that night, and I did not meet this person face to face. Well, did you make it to the end? I certainly hope you did. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. And I will see you next time. Morbid Whispers, House of Dreams.